Kash Ali should obviously be severely punished for biting David Price and getting himself disqualified. But I do think that a lot of people are going way overboard by saying that he should be banned for life. I don't know how long these people have been watching boxing for, but do they not realize that loads of fighters over the years have bitten opponents? Even Derek Chisora, for example, bit an opponent early on in his career. I think it was Paul Butler, or was it somebody else? But it was some journeyman early on in his career that he bit. Should we retroactively ban Derek Chisora for life? And if you want to have some historical examples, Andrew Golota back in the days bit Samson Pahua in the heavyweight fight. When Golota was hurt by Pahua, he was worried about being knocked out. He bit Samson Pahua on the shoulder or on the neck. Back in the days, Michael Bent in the WBO World Heavyweight title fight bit Herbie Hyde. And obviously the most famous example being Mike Tyson biting a chunk out of Evander Holyfield's ear in the rematch back in, what was it, 97? Yeah, Mike Tyson bit a chunk out of his ear, spat it out onto the canvas. Now at the time, there were lots of calls for Mike Tyson to be banned for life, but ultimately he wasn't banned for life. He got, I think, a year or two ban. Then he came back and got licensed, and he was even licensed by the British Board of Boxing Control. Yeah, after he bit a chunk out of Holyfield's ear, he served his ban, and then the British board gave him a license to fight in the UK against Julius Francis and Lou Savarese. So if all these fighters over the years, including somebody like Chisora fairly recently, early on in his career, if all these fighters over the years have bitten opponents and not been banned for life, and I don't know if there are some fighters maybe who have been banned for life for biting, but certainly none of those fighters I've known, and there are many who have bitten opponents, none of them were banned for life. So if all these guys didn't get banned for life, I don't see a case for banning Kash Ali for life for biting David Price. Was it dirty? Hell yeah. Should he be banned for a certain length of time? Of course. Should he be fined? Of course. But banned for life, I just don't see a case for it because, as I say, other fighters haven't been treated anywhere near that harshly when it comes to the very same indiscretion. Now, I'm going to get to my breakdown of the fight in terms of what both fighters did right and wrong and their overall performances and where they both go from here. I'm going to get onto that a little later on in the video, but for now, I first want to address the most controversial matter at hand, which was that bite. Why did he do it? Well, on a superficial level, the reason that Kash Ali bit David Price is because he wanted a way out. He quit. And it's ironic because before the fight, he was accusing David Price of being a quitter, but in the fight, he turned out to be the quitter. He bit David Price because he would rather get disqualified than get knocked out. On a superficial level, that's true, but on a deeper level, what's going on psychologically that led him to make that choice? Because many other fighters in that situation, they wouldn't have quit. Because in that fifth round, Kash Ali was actually landing his best punches of the fight. David Price was slowing down. He was becoming more stationary. He was allowing Kash Ali to get a lot closer to him. It was essentially turning into a shootout in that fifth round, where Kash Ali was landing good shots and David Price was also landing good shots. Now, in a situation like that, yeah, Kash Ali could well have got knocked out, but he was also in a situation where he had his best opportunity to knock Pricey out. And as a fighter who's been fighting on small hall shows his whole career, this was his opportunity to make something of himself. This was his opportunity to, grab with both hands and gamble to have his career move on to another level. But he didn't take that opportunity. He bottled it and decided to quit right when he had his best opportunity to win. Yeah, again, I know he'd been wobbled. I know he was, teetering on the brink of getting stopped himself, but that was also his best opportunity to take David Price out. He threw it away. Why did he do it? Well, some people are saying because he's a scumbag and blah, blah. Yeah, again, that's all may well be true, but it's superficial. On a deeper level, what was going on there psychologically? Now, in a post-fight interview with IFL, Kash Ali said that the reason he did what he did is because the street mentality kicked in. And a lot of people have just flat out rejected that and said that's nonsense. But it's actually not nonsense. I actually 100% concur with Kash Ali and accept what he's saying, that the street mentality kicked in, but it didn't kick in for the reasons that he might be given. The reason that the street mentality kicked in is because on the street, it's fight or flight. On the street, you often find yourself in dangerous situations and you may have to react in an extreme way to get yourself out of that dangerous situation. And not only is it about that, but on the street, it's also about preserving your reputation. So many street dudes are obsessed with their own reputation, and they will do anything. They will do the most desperate and sometimes disgusting things just to preserve their own reputation. Now, in my experience in boxing, both watching professional boxing and even in the gym, in amateur gyms and pro gyms, and I've seen some crazy things going in the gym, people. I've seen fighters, midway through a sparring session, end up trying to headbutt and kick and elbow the guy they're sparring with because he's getting the better of them. I've seen some guys after a spar take the gloves off and try and have a straightener, a bare knuckle. I've seen some guys after a spar pick up weapons and try to attack the guy they were sparring with because they felt so humiliated getting beaten up in the spar. I've seen, not seen, but heard about incidents where someone got beaten up in a sparring session, and then a week or so later, they see the guy who beat them up and they go and attack that guy with their friends. And most of these incidents have been carried out by street dudes, because street dudes very often, and I'm talking about street dudes who box, not most of them, but a certain percentage of them, a sizable minority of them, are more concerned with preserving their street reputation than they are with preserving their boxing reputation. And when I say the boxing reputation, I'm talking about their reputation among other boxers and among the boxing fraternity. Yeah, many of them, a minority, but a sizable minority, are more concerned with preserving their street reputation than preserving their boxing reputation. It means more to them. Now, with Kash Ali, if you notice at the pre-fight press conference, he brought a bunch of little cheerleaders with him. Yeah. A bunch of people who, in front of them, he was saying, I've been in serious situations in the street. That's what he said to David Price when Price said, you're going to freeze on a big occasion. Kash Ali said, this is just a boxing match. I've been in some serious situations on the street. And he was saying this, Kash Ali, in front of them little cheerleaders that he brought with him. Well, what does that tell you? That tells you that those little cheerleaders that he brought with him buy into this idea that Kash Ali is some kind of tough guy on the street. Maybe they know about situations Kash Ali's been on the street fights, and maybe a guy hit him with a bare knuckle a few times on the chin and couldn't budge him. The streets are all about hype a lot of the time. And a reputation which is built on some real stuff, but also built on a lot of hype. That's what you find on the streets. And so when you're dealing with most street people, they're casuals. They don't know nothing about boxing. They don't realize that in boxing, you win some, you lose some. In boxing, it's a process that you have to go through when you start boxing, where you have to get beat up in sparring a bunch of times. You have to lose fights in the amateurs. You have to get dropped and get off the canvas. Sometimes you might get knocked out. This is the process that you go through, and you eventually build yourself up and become that bad boy boxer as the finished product. But you didn't walk in the gym straight off the roads and just start knocking everybody out in the gym. Nah, you had to go through a process where you had to humble yourself, get beaten up, build yourself up, learn how to fight, etc. But the streets, I'm telling you, most of the people on the street, they don't know that. They don't realize that. They're ignorant about boxing. They just look at a dude and say, oh, he's a bad man on the roads. He's going to bad up everybody in the boxing ring too because he's a bad man. He can't be knocked out. He's a bad man. I've seen him in street fight and he did this and that and the other. And when you're bringing those kind of people around you instead of boxing people, they have unrealistic expectations. And when you start caring about their expectations and you're so desperate to preserve your reputation among those kind of people, it usually doesn't end well for you in a boxing ring, because you're going to do stupid things, as Kash Ali did, because he was so concerned about preserving the reputation he has in the eyes of his little minions who look up to him as some kind of tough guy on the roads. You understand what I'm saying? And there are many examples of this that I can give you over the years. I mean, Zab Judah, he was a street dude. Look at all the stupid things Zab Judah did, all the antics he pulled. You know when he got knocked out by Costa Zoo and he started attacking the referee? That's the kind of thing I've seen from street dudes. Again, not all of them, not most of them, but a sizable minority of them who box. That's the kind of foolishness that I see from them. Most of the times when I've seen them kind of antics, it's been from street dudes who box, who do like Zab Judah did in the Costa Zoo fight, attacking the referee. Because he's so concerned about his reputation in front of the street people. And street people are ignorant. Most of them don't know nothing about boxing. They're all on a hype. They don't understand that in boxing things happen. You could be the toughest, baddest guy from the street and you could be fighting somebody who grew up middle class and they might knock you out. It happens. Right? But the streets don't understand that. So I think Kash Ali did resort to the street mentality. The street mentality did kick in because he was worried about his street reputation, and he went into the street mentality of fight or flight. Because when you're on the streets, you know, you find yourself in dangerous situations where you feel like you have to do something extreme to get yourself out of that situation. And you might feel like you have to do something extreme to preserve your reputation in certain scenarios. So all of that kicked in for Kash Ali, the fight or flight, you know, the street mentality of being worried about being humiliated in front of his little cronies who think he's some kind of tough guy on the roads, being more concerned about the street rep than the boxing rep. All of that kicked in for Kash Ali, and he did what he did. He panicked in that situation. He couldn't bear the scenario where he gets exposed in front of his little cronies, because his little cronies probably sit around laughing at fighters getting knocked out all the time while they watch YouTube, when these guys have never laced up a pair of gloves and they're watching people get knocked out and all this kind of stuff, laughing, thinking that, you know, only idiots get knocked out. Like a real fighter can't get. This is the kind of mentality, because I'm from the streets. I'm from the street environment where I know the kind of mentality most people have. And they think someone getting knocked out with one punch, oh, you must be some waste, man. How can you get knocked out in one punch? Some of the greatest fighters of all time got knocked out in one punch. But the streets are ignorant. You understand? So you can't, as a boxing person, you can't allow yourself to care about what the street people think. Because street people don't know, most of them don't know nothing about boxing. Once you allow yourself to care about what they think, you might come out with the erratic behavior of a Kash Ali or a Mike Tyson. You know, Mike Tyson was taken away from the streets. He's a good example. He was taken away from the streets, and his street mentality was somewhat suppressed when he was with Customado, Kevin Rooney, Jimmy Jacobs. The street mentality was still there, but it was somewhat suppressed for a certain stretch of his career. But after he went to prison, he came back out of prison with the very same street mentality that he had when he was a kid in Brooklyn. Because when he was in Brooklyn, he was running around with the lowlifes, the dregs, the killers, you know, all the scumbags. When he got put in prison, he was right back where he was in the beginning in Brownsville. He was in prison with the murderers, the scumbags, the killers, and that old Brooklyn, Brownsville mentality kicked back in for Mike Tyson. And that's what he came out of prison with. And so when he came out of prison, he had people like Crocodile hanging around with him. This guy who was a convicted murderer and stuff like that. He had all these street people hanging around him, whispering in his ear, gassing him up. And so Tyson started caring more about the way his little street cheerleaders viewed him. He started caring more about the way they viewed him and the way street people viewed him than the way the boxing fraternity viewed him. And that's what resulted in him biting Holyfield. One of the things that resulted him biting Holyfield in the rematch. Even in the first fight, Tyson was doing some dirty stuff that people don't talk about against Holyfield, like headbutting. People talk about Holyfield headbutting him. There's one of the rounds there where Tyson blatantly headbutts Evander Holyfield in that fight. And of course, later on in his career against Franz Botha and a bunch of other people who tried to break their arm and, do all kinds of stuff. But again, this is because in prison, it brought that street mentality back up to the surface. All of the discipline, all of the suppression of the street mentality, which had occurred during the time that he was with Jimmy Jacobs, Customado, Kevin Rooney, the street mentality was still there to some extent because Tyson was still dirty in the ring back then, all right? But he wasn't as dirty as we saw after prison. And, you look at the Buster Douglas fight, he took his beating like a man in that fight against Buster Douglas. But against Holyfield, he took a beating in the first fight and he had an excuse in the first fight. I wasn't in shape. I didn't take it serious. That's the excuse that he sold to his little street crew. But in the second fight, he was in shape. He was back with Richie Giacchetti. There's no way that he could have any excuse about being out of shape in the second fight. So he had to while out. When he realized he weren't going to beat Holyfield, the street mentality kicked in, the fight or flight. He couldn't face being humiliated in front of his little street cheerleaders. And he did what he did. Yeah? Andrew Galotta, that's another guy I talked about biting an opponent. Andrew Galotta was another street dude. Andrew Galotta, he had an amateur career. I think he was even an Olympian, Andrew Galotta. But when Galotta left Poland to go to the United States, he didn't do so because he was pursuing a boxing career. No. The reason Andrew Galotta left Poland is because he was wanted by the police for a serious assault where he'd bashed up some guy in a bar and he was looking at doing 5 years. So rather than that happen to him in Poland, he fled the country and went to the United States to escape prison. And he was only intending to work as a truck driver in the United States when he initially landed there. But he found a local gym because obviously he had a career in amateur boxing. He started training. And, the rest is history. He became a pro fighter. But during his pro career, Andrew Galotta did all the impulsive stuff that many street dudes end up doing. He was biting opponents and hitting them low and headbutting them and doing all kind of crazy stuff, Andrew Galotta. And he did crazy stuff outside the ring too, even in the United States. As I say, there are many, many other examples. I've talked about Zab Judah, in the Costa Zoo fight doing foolishness. Andrew Galotta was a street dude, obviously. He did all kind of crazy stuff. Mike Tyson, on and on it goes. Now, again, just to reiterate, because I know some people are going to misquote me. Most fighters who are street dudes do not end up doing crazy stuff. I'm just saying that there's a higher percentage of street dudes who do crazy stuff in the ring than non-street dudes because of the reasons I've outlined. And again, that's why I think Kash Ali did what he did. For those reasons. So again, it's not making any excuse for it at all, but I'm just saying from a psychological point of view, you can see what's going on. So going forward, it should be a little bit of a warning sign for any of you when you hear a guy before the fight banging on about the streets. Oh, I'm from the streets and this, that, and the other. And I've been in serious situations, particularly when they got a little gang of cheerleaders in front of them. Because rather than get knocked out, a minority of them, but a sizable minority, would rather cheat and find a way out of the fight other than getting stretched out on the canvas because they're trying to preserve this street reputation. Now, some people are going to say, Jarrell Miller, I don't think Miller would do that. Maybe I'm wrong. I just feel like Miller won't be one of the guys who does that because he does come from a martial arts background. He has got his butt kicked in martial arts. He has got his butt kicked in boxing, in the gym. I think he'll be able to handle it because I do think he has enough of the boxing mentality and he has enough of the, he has enough respect for the boxing fraternity to not do something crazy, but you never know. You never know. As far as David Price's performance in this fight, and Kash Ali's performance. I'm not going to lie. Kash Ali had a lot more success than I was expecting. He was landing some nice jabs to the body. in the first couple of rounds, and we all know David Price has had stamina issues in his career. And even though David Price won most of the rounds, as I mentioned earlier, Kash Ali was starting to have more and more success the longer the fight went on. And in that 5th round, he landed some nice shots. So for Kash Ali to have that level of success when he's just an area level fighter against David Price, that is very, very worrying for Pricey. That's very worrying. I expected him to deal with Kash Ali with relative ease. And I thought that he would probably have more issues against Tom Little than he had against Kash Ali. But I actually think he had a bit more issues against Kash Ali than he did against Little. Although he failed to knock either of them out. And, well, he stopped Tom Little, but he didn't knock him out properly. Little maybe was a punch or two away from going down. But I've seen a lot of people say that these are area level fighters. Pricey should be dealing with them in a couple of rounds with ease. The fact that he isn't is a very worrying sign. And I agree with that. I do agree with that. They're looking to match David Price up against the winner of Dave Allen, Lucas Brown. And that's a fight that Dave Allen has wanted for years. If you remember when Dave Allen first came on the scene, he was calling David Price out. And at the time, people were actually booing Dave Allen. You remember that? When he after one of Dave Allen's fights, he called David Price out on Sky. And the crowd were booing because they all loved Price at the time and nobody really knew Dave Allen. But now the tables are kind of turned and Dave Allen has got this cult following in British boxing. And it's going to be interesting to see who has more support if that fight ends up happening. Obviously, Dave Allen's got to get past Lucas Brown. But if he does get past him and gets past him in good fashion, I'm going to imagine that most people will be picking Dave Allen to win the fight because of how poor most people perceive David Price's past 2 performances to have been. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, it's worrying times for Pricey. But then again, his whole career has been worrying times, right? That's why we enjoy tuning in to watch him fight, because you never know whether he's going to chin the opponent or the opponent's going to chin him. That's the beauty of a David Price fight. You never know who's going to get chinned. So, yeah, Pricey's performance was concerning because, as I say, he slowed down after a couple of rounds to the point where Kash Ali was able to land shots on him. And this is an area level guy who's not very fast, whose technique looks poor, who's quite crude. But that guy was able to get close to him and start landing shots on him. So Pricey's defense is still poor. His stamina still appears to leave a lot to be desired. He wasn't noticeably hurt by anything Kash Ali hit him with. But do we know that Kash Ali is actually any kind of puncher? I don't know. And also David Price was, in the first few rounds, very cautious. And I think it was after Kash Ali swung a few haymakers at him that David Price was like, actually, let me take care over here because I'm fighting in front of my hometown fans and, you know, I don't want to suffer the indignation of being chinned in front of him like I was against Tony Thompson. So let me just take a step back and box this guy a little bit before I open up on him maybe later on. But during that time when he was being circumspect and taking his time, I feel he at least gave one round away to Kash Ali, the first round where Kash Ali was landing some nice jabs to the body. So, yeah, it doesn't look great for David Price, man, but I'm still going to continue watching him. I think he's great value for money. And I'll be honest, I enjoyed the David Price-Kash Ali fight, even though it ended in an anticlimax and a very frustrating disqualification. I still enjoyed it, and I was still far more engrossed in the Price-Kash Ali fight than I was in any other fight on the bill, including the Fowler-Fitzgerald fight. Yeah, I was more engrossed in the Pricey fight. So I'm still going to enjoy his fights moving forward. If they're hoping to match him against the Allen Brown winner, then they probably want to keep him out of the ring before they do that, because if he's struggling with an area level guy like Kash Ali, they might put him in with an innocuous journeyman and that guy ends up chinning him. So keep him out of the ring until the Price Brown fight has happened, and then put him in there with the winner of that. And let's see if Price can manage to defeat them. So those are my thoughts on David Price, Kash Ali. Actually, another example, because I've just seen the window I left open deliberately here for you guys. Another example of a street dude pulling some ridiculous antics in a boxing ring would be this lowlife here, James Butler. James Butler, and some of you guys may be aware of this fight, he had a fight against a guy called Richard Grant back in 2001. He lost the fight by unanimous decision. After the fight, in the ring, as it says here, Grant approached Butler to hug him, but was instead sucker punched in the jaw by Butler, who was then arrested, convicted, and sent to jail. So you guys can go watch that on YouTube. After the fight, this guy walks up to the opponent who just beat him by UD. When the opponent thinks he's going to hug him, James Butler sucker punches him and breaks his jaw. James Butler then went on to murder Max Kellerman's brother. True story. He murdered Max Kellerman's brother, this guy, and went to prison for life. So this is another example of a street dude allowing the ignorant fight or flight, I must protect my street reputation mentality to overwhelm him, and ends up doing something stupid in the ring like he did against Richard Grant. And ultimately the streets took him anyway. He ended up, going to prison for murder. So yeah, that is what that is. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about everything I've talked about in this video. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.